I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector News Podcast. And joining me today, I have the Director and CEO of First Phosphate Corp, John Passalacqua. Welcome, John.
Yeah, hi, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. We got to meet each other in Quebec City at the Investment Conference of the North. I enjoyed my time talking to you and learning about your company. Let's give me the elevator pitch and the quick overview of what First Phosphate is.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So First Phosphate is the only company in the world that's fully dedicated to extracting and purifying phosphate for the production of high-grade purified phosphoric acid that goes into creating LFP cathode active material, which is the powder that goes into the cathode of the battery, and that's the lithium iron phosphate battery, which is a type of lithium ion battery, but different than the nickel, manganese, cobalt battery. Just uses different elements. Instead of using nickel, manganese, and cobalt in the cathode, it uses lithium and iron. So we plan to utilize a partnership-based approach in very prudent fashion that will get us all the way from mine, that is mining the phosphate, concentrating it, and then through our partnership with Crayon Technologies in Belgium, making it into purified phosphoric acid, and then eventually through further partnerships to come, making it into cathode active material for the creation of lithium iron phosphate batteries that will then go into energy storage units, many other applications, and also, of course, the growing electric vehicle space. We hold 1,500 square kilometers of royalty-free claims in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean region of Quebec, where there is a very special type of phosphate. It's an igneous-based phosphate, meaning it's from volcanic rock, and it's the purest 1% of phosphate rock that will be found anywhere in the world. So what this does is it's able to create a very pure, purified phosphoric acid, a lot of it, that can go into the LFP battery, and also it's so pure that the byproducts can easily be recycled, such as the gypsum that comes out of when you make purified phosphoric acid. So we have full circularity over the process, which is very important, obviously, for the battery sector.
Perfect. That's a great summation of the company. The battery technology, let's dive into that. Most people are familiar with the lithium ion battery, the what you refer to as the nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries. How is the lithium phosphate iron batteries different, and how are their applications different from the lithium ion batteries?
Yeah, so to start, Michael, they're both lithium-ion batteries, nickel, manganese, cobalt, and some of the other chemistries, and so is the lithium iron phosphate. They're very complementary. They both have different types of uses. The nickel, manganese, cobalt battery, its primary advantage over LFP is that it has a little bit longer range, sometimes 25 to 30% range in general. But the lithium iron phosphate battery has a lot of other advantages as well. It's got a longer cycle life. It means you can charge and recharge it more often, and it doesn't die out. It has a longer calendar life as well. It is non-toxic. It's got very high fire safety, so you won't find these batteries catching on fire. And also it's got much lower cost, meaning that the cost of the cathode active material for a lithium iron phosphate battery can sometimes be 50% to up to 66% cheaper than the conventional nickel, manganese, cobalt battery. And also the LFP battery, where it has a little bit of a shorter range. Obviously, it's much better for closer driving distances in the city, keeps the price of the vehicle low. But also, there's a new type of lithium iron phosphate battery. It's called lithium iron manganese phosphate, where they put a little bit of manganese into the chemistry as a doping agent, and they seem to be getting almost as long distance as the NMC battery. So with that little enhancement with the manganese, you're almost got the same type of battery as a nickel, manganese, cobalt battery, but with all the advantages of the fire safety, the longer cycle life, and of course the lower cost.
No, they're not very common in North America or here in the West, but I understand, the predominant battery in China. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. They are the predominant battery in China. They're about over 50% of the battery chemistries in China right now. But what it's also important to understand is that, we're not the leading market here in North America, nor is Europe, for electrification. It truly is China. So whatever happens in China usually eventually happens elsewhere in the world, in the same way that when we were leaders in other industries in North America, it would happen first in North America, and then the waves would propagate out to the world. But knowing that we were maybe a few years behind China in terms of electrification, lithium iron phosphate battery is going to likely grow to almost the same amount in North America and Europe as it currently is in China. And we're already seeing really, really strong growth trends towards that. For instance, nearly half of all the Teslas on the road now, wherever they are globally and even in North America, are carrying LFP battery. And since that has started, Tesla has dramatically reduced its prices, and it's forced the other competitors to do the same. So now you see that Ford is also using LFP batteries for its F-150 Lightning. It's also using it for its Ford Mustang. And also you see that Rivian has started in its models to use the LFP as well. It's hard to say who went first, who went second, but it's definitely the Tesla that's really leading this charge with the LFP battery. So I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I think it's going to come much, much stronger than what we think. And this battery already globally is, about 50% of the battery chemistries out there. This was predicted to happen by 2030, but it's already happening here in 2023, 2024. And we're just going to see the strong growth trajectory continue. The other really important thing about this battery, Michael, is that, it's not just for EVs, it's for large scale energy storage, small scale energy storage. It has a lot of other applications as well. So it's a very versatile type of chemistry. And that's why, you'll see it going into the EVs even quicker, because there's a vested interest from the manufacturers of all types of batteries to have this chemistry propagate. And it's also chemistry that's been around for over 20 years. So it's tried, true, and tested. So I think, I guess in conclusion, look for this to make a really major impact, the LFP, lithium iron phosphate battery in North America rather quickly.
Yeah, I see that as being definitely part of the solution. Most of the vehicles that you have in urban environments never leave those urban environments, and this seems to be a more cost-effective way to power those vehicles greenly than the current technology. The question I have, though, is that not all phosphate is equal. You're dealing with some pretty high purity phosphate mineralization in the area that you're working in, whereas a lot of the phosphate predominantly used for agricultural purposes doesn't have that level of purity. Is there enough phosphate in the high purity like you folks are working with to actually make this battery technology viable in the long run, or are we going to run out of the phosphate that's needed?
Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. I mean, the first part of the question is, you were saying, this is great for the simple fact that it's going to allow more city cars to develop, and that's absolutely true. I mean, this is really the chemistry of mass adoption, I believe, lithium iron phosphate battery. So your second point, yes, a lot of it is going to be needed. Now, the problem with traditional phosphate, generally phosphate for fertilizer, is that it uses sedimentary rock, meaning it's kind of like, sandy type of phosphate that has accumulated over the years and, what were, old ancient seabeds, if you will, versus the igneous phosphate, which is the one that we have, which is, more come out of volcanic activity. So the big difference there is that the sedimentary rocks, phosphate, have a lot of cadmium, uranium, thorium, and a lot of impurities in them. And they're good to just do a quick purification, first level purification, then to use on the fields for fertilizer or to feed, into animal feeds. But when you're looking at battery grade, you've really got to purify that even further. And it's quite hard to purify that sedimentary phosphate rock up to purified phosphoric acid. Only about 10, 15, maximum 20% of it, with a lot of work, can be purified up to purified phosphoric acid. But when you have igneous rock like we do, 90% of it can be purified up to purified phosphoric acid, because it starts off with such a high level of purity to begin with. It's because of it's settled in the magma in the Earth's crust at a specific density, hundreds of millions, if not billions of years ago. And so, it's very pure. So 90% of that can be purified up to purified phosphoric acid. Whereas a sedimentary rock, you're stuck with, somewhere between 10 to 20% maximum that can go up to purified phosphoric acid. So yes, you are right. With all the requirement that we will have for purified phosphoric acid for batteries, you need to make a lot of it, and you need to make a lot of it clean. And really the only solution to that is the igneous rock, because you can make a lot of it. A lot of that igneous rock, 90% of it gets converted to purified phosphoric acid. And number two, the gypsum that comes off of that purification process is fully recyclable. It's not radioactive like the sedimentary rock. So that gypsum can be recycled into plaster and into wallboard. So, with igneous rock, we have the perfect solution for making a lot of purified phosphoric acid.
Perfect. And there's enough of that to make a lot of batteries?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. This igneous anorthosite rock, where we have our claims, is found only in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean region of Quebec for the most part. That's the only real spot that you find it in all of North America, and there is quite a bit of it. The trick is to find it in, decent enough concentrations, number one. But number two, maybe even more importantly, is to find it, near infrastructure. So our claims are all sitting, within 140 and then 75 and then 40 kilometers from the deep sea port of Saguenay. So we're very close to a deep sea port where we can, transport material to. There's a big industrial area at the port. We already have MOU in place, and we have the industrial footprint to be able to do that processing on. So that's very important, because otherwise, if you have the phosphate, but you're too far from a processing facility, from infrastructure, from workforce, from hydro, from a road network, it gets very expensive, because it's a commodity that trades sort of at around igneous phosphate trades maybe around $450 USD per ton. So you're moving a lot of material in order to make your quotas. So the infrastructure is almost more important than the grades.
So this could be a case of, if you build it, they will come. So if the mine gets built in the Saguenay area, the battery manufacturers will likely show up and build plants there, because it'll have a greater reduction in their transportation costs. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah, that's a great thought. You see, when you take phosphate from the ground, it needs to be concentrated. That usually happens at the mine site. We get our phosphate concentrate to 41% phosphate within a host mineral called apatite. Theoretical max would be 42%, so we're very pure. But then you've got to move it to a processing facility where it's made into what's called purified phosphoric acid. Now, once you have purified phosphoric acid, it's a commodity that, it can ship, but it doesn't ship that easily. And to maintain maximum levels of purity, it's usually best to, use it on site. So if we have a purified phosphoric acid plant at the Port of Saguenay, it's not that difficult afterwards to then envision that a LFP cathode active material, that is the powder in the battery, manufacturer would locate next to us to be able to have, instant access to that purified phosphoric acid in pure format, without contamination, and also, without increasing the carbon footprint and the time sensitivities to receive that material. So what we are trying to do at the Port of Saguenay, in fact, as First Phosphate, is to have, phosphate, lithium, and a source of iron all available at the Port of Saguenay, so that, yes, a cathode active material manufacturer could locate with us at the Port of Saguenay, where there's 1,200 hectares of open industrial land, which is, unheard of in the Western Hemisphere. And in fact, the Quebec government has just put $105 million into the Port of Saguenay. And, they're declaring it the second battery valley of North America. Now the Port of Saguenay is actively marketing itself as, the second Bécancour. So yeah, it's fathomable that you could have a purified phosphoric acid plant. Right beside it, you would have an LFP cathode active material manufacturing plant, and maybe even a battery cell manufacturing plant next to that.
Given its critical nature as the phosphate that you're going to be producing, is it considered a critical material yet?
Okay, so interestingly enough, in Europe, phosphate is on the critical minerals list. In the province of Ontario, it is. We've been actively, working to try and get it onto the critical mineral list in Quebec. in Canada and in the US. And we feel that, us and other participants in the industry have made some serious headway, and we expect to see some good news on those fronts in the near future. I know there's been a petition by senators in the U.S. Senate recently in the last month to put phosphate on the critical minerals list, and certainly there's been petitions to the U.S. DOE, the DOD, government of Quebec, and government of Canada as well.
So we know the end result. We know what'll happen if there is a mine there, but you're still an exploration company. So what are the plans for the balance of this year?
Yeah, so we're not necessarily an exploration company anymore. I mean, you have two properties that are further along than others. We have about 15 areas where we know that we have staked out, where we know that there's decent grades of phosphate, and we're starting to do surface sampling and explore those. But two of our properties that are most furthest advanced are Lac Lorignel. That's 140 kilometers from the deep sea port of Saguenay. That one has a 43-101 in place. It's got 49 million tons of ore identified as a resource. And that ore contains phosphate at about 5.2%, contains another two minerals, ilmenite, which holds titanium, and magnetite, which holds iron. And we're now moving that property to a PEA, a preliminary economic assessment. That was scheduled for Q4 of this year, but we believe that will come in a little bit earlier. And then we have another property, which till not so long ago was, just a blue sky property, but now has become a very strong exploration property. That's Bégin-La-Marche. That sits at 70 kilometers from the deep sea port of Saguenay. And we've identified, we've done a 4,200 meter drill program there. We've identified, a 7 kilometer long, magnetic linear anomaly. It's just full of phosphate, phosphate at about, 5 to 7%. And what we like a lot about that property is that, it's sitting at, 70 kilometers from the deep sea port of Saguenay. So it's got grades, it's got infrastructure, and it's got, accessibility to the port, hydro, and also, great workforce in the area. So those are our two properties that are most furthest along. And like you were saying, then we have a number of other exploration properties as well.
Perfect. As the plans for the balance of the year, are they funded?
So right now we are funded to hit all of our milestones. Our milestones are coming up here by the end of Q4 and early Q1 of next year. And we've already hit a lot of our milestones ahead of time. So our phosphate concentration pilot plant has been put to life. We've created a 900 kilogram sample of phosphate concentrate that has been sent to Prayon, our partner, who will be turning that into purified phosphoric acid. We're well on track to completing our PEA at Lac Lorignel ahead of schedule.
So what else should people know about the company going forward?
Well, I mean, I think what's important to note is that, it's the only company out there worldwide that's, fully focused on phosphate for the production of high-grade phosphate concentrate, purified phosphoric acid, and LFP cathode active material. We have one focus and one focus only, and that's on the production of phosphate as a technological material. We're the only company that I know of out there worldwide that's doing that. We're sitting in the best rock in the world to be able to do that, which is Quebec igneous and northocite rock. We're sitting in the best jurisdiction to do it. And, with the shortages that there already exist in North America for phosphate, there's going to be no other way to meet the demand for purified phosphoric acid to make LFP cathode active material in North America without a project like First Phosphate. So First Phosphate really sits at the center of electrification through LFP battery in North America. Without First Phosphate, there will be no purified phosphoric acid, or there will be very limited amounts, and there will be very limited amounts of ability to create LFP cathode active material in North America. So we're sitting really at the heart, at the beginning of the entire supply chain to create LFP cathode active material. And that's with the raw materials to do it.
Perfect. As I said in the opening, I was really excited to sit down with you in Quebec City and learn more about what you were doing. I'm going to be excited to watch this move forward. I've been a big believer that Canada will become an energy superpower just because of the nature of the resources that we have in this country. And it'll be nice to see First Phosphate take a seat in that leadership role. So if people want to get a hold of you and follow the company further, how would they do so?
Yeah, thanks, Michael, from your lips to God's ears, because that's what we're out here to do. We're out here to build a very strong business. If anybody wants to learn more about First Phosphate, there's always our website. It's www.firstphosphate.com. There's also our LinkedIn. There's our Twitter. You can find me personally active on LinkedIn. And obviously there's our stock, which trades on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the symbol PHOS. That's PHOS, Peter, Harry, Oscar, Sam, PHOS for phosphate. And then we're also on the Frankfurt Bourse as KDO or KD0.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for joining me, John. And I hope you can come back after the PEA has been completed and discuss those findings.
That would be great. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. The Prospector News podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.